Based on our previous conversation, I'd like to talk more about how to make the schedules or how to make some specific training method for lower-level students.
A structured schedule and specific training methods are crucial for low-level students. Building on the 30 categories and 300 sentences we discussed, we can create a cyclical plan. How about a 3-day cycle that progressively builds skills?
We have a little bit different perspective about the number of example sentences. Like you said, 10 sentences for each category, but I would say 30 example sentences for each category. What did you say?
That is a valid perspective. While 10 is good for initial pattern recognition, 30 can certainly accelerate the pattern 체화, or internalization, you emphasized previously. The benefit of 30 sentences is the deeper immersion and exposure to varied contexts, which strengthens the slot concept. To manage the potential overload that comes with 300 sentences, we can modify the 3-day cycle. Does this revised approach for integrating 30 examples is worth generating the specific content now?
Okay, in the middle of cycle of repetition, if I put 30 example sentences for each category, then that means 900 sentences. Then maybe they can do this every day. Then that means 30 sentences for each drill. Then I feel a little bit packed about the whole schedule, but what did you say when it comes to how do I say this? Sometimes we need some time gap between the drill.
You make a critical point about the total volume and the necessary time gap for effective absorption, especially for lower-level learners. 900 sentences can be overwhelming for daily consumption. To address this, we can refine the cyclical plan.
There's some error.
I apologize for any confusion. Let's clarify the schedule and repetition cycle. The intention is not to process all 900 sentences every day, but to use the 30 example sentences for specific drills within the 3-day cycle, followed by rest and review. Shall we proceed with outlining the first 10 categories and generating the initial 30 sentences for the 동사의 작용 category?
I love to have those example sentences for first 3 categories.
Perfect. We will start with the foundational 3 categories to build that strong base using the 30-sentence drill method. Here are the first category sets, following the slot build-up approach with progressive complexity.
Okay, I'm kind of studying and finding best way to practice the part 5 pattern and expressions or sentence structures that are used in TOEIC part 5 quiz. So that's why I had some of the research on it, and with how do I say this? It's Notebook LM. I put many of the prep books, and based on these real examples and all kinds of prep books and suggestions in these books, the Gemini studied it, and we were having a conversation based on this whole real study. Then Gemini concluded that the slot pattern repetition study is one of the best way to master part part 5 and 6 area. So that's what we were talking about previously. And Gemini concluded that the whole patterns and the whole repeated patterns are concluded into 30 main categories. So I made it some of the example sentences for each category. Then I said, what if we had 30 example sentences for each? Then we're gonna read aloud. First of all, at the first time initially, I thought reading and writing them down on the notebook is very crucial for mastering this area of TOEIC test, but Gemini suggests me reading aloud is much better than copying the whole sentences on your notebook. So I think that makes sense. Reading aloud is more physical, and later when you encounter same patterns on your real test, then it could be automatic, compared to just writing and copying down the whole sentences over and over again. And also, it takes a lot of time. You have to spend a lot of amount of time writing down them. So reading aloud is much better, and I think it's the most efficient way to master this area. And second, what I have to decide was number of example sentences that we have to repeat. So I asked ChatGPT how many example sentences you want to recommend. Then it says 10 of them for each category. So I asked again, what about 30? Then 30 for 30 categories means 900 sentences. That means each and every day you practice with 30 sentences only. Then that makes up to 30 days, a month, to complete a whole round of repetition. But it says it is too much and is overwhelming for beginner levels, like lower than 600 points or lower than 700 points. Yeah, I agree that I think this AI has a more deeper insight than me, and I totally agree with this. And maybe we're going to deal with 10 example sentences for each pattern slot. The AI, the Gemini, named it slot pattern something. So you have not a blank, but how do I call this, Mike? Yeah, parenthesis. Yeah, the Gemini is recommending me to use parenthesis, 括号, for each pattern, and chunk of syntaxes. That way you can easily recognize each pattern and number of sentences. Reading aloud, then you will make it natural, and it will become one part of your language by repeating and reading aloud over and over again, maybe 100 times or 200 times. That makes you perfect on these expressions, and make it automatic when you encounter same pattern on real TOEIC test. So I think AI is way smarter than me when it comes to setting up the strategy for test takers like TOEIC or TOEFL. So that's what I'm doing right now today.